Welcome to Crypto Stock Lab.
So November kicked off with, well, let's call it what it was, an absolutely brutal market-wide sell-off. It tested just about everyone's conviction, and it's got us all asking one single critical question. Are we watching the start of a deep, painful crash, or is this just the violent shakeout right before the next absolutely explosive move up? Let's dig in and try to figure that out. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? That's the question on every single trader's mind right now. You see all the headlines screaming that the party is over. But is that the whole picture? Is there something else going on just beneath the surface? This really is a tale of two completely different ways of looking at the exact same brutal event. To really get why everyone was freaking out, you have to wrap your head around this number. $20 billion. Vanished, wiped out in a single day. I mean, we are not talking about a small dip here. This was, and I mean literally, the single biggest liquidation event in the history of crypto. Just a massive, massive shockwave. So, before we can even begin to guess where we're going next, we first have to understand the sheer violence of what just happened. So let's break down this record-setting collapse. So you might be asking yourself, how on earth does a market just nosedive that fast and that hard? Well, it all comes down to two words: leverage liquidation. Think of it this way. You borrow a ton of money to make a giant bet. You're basically on a high wire. If the price moves against you, even a tiny bit, the exchange doesn't call you up to chat. They just force sell your position right then and there to get their money back. And this is where things get really vicious. That first forced sale pushes the price down even more. And what does that do? Well, it triggers the next person's liquidation, which pushes the price down further. And then the next person's, and the next, and the next. It's a domino effect, a cascade that just feeds on itself. And that right there, that is how $20 billion just vanishes into thin air. And you can see the damage right here in black and white. The pain was everywhere. Bitcoin took a hit, Ethereum got smacked even harder, and then you see that pain ripple outwards. It hits companies like Bitmain that hold a lot of ETH. This was a serious, broad, nobody is safe kind of sell-off. Okay, so that's the what happened. Now for the really important part. Why did it happen? And look, something this big is never just one thing. It was more like a perfect storm. We've pinpointed 4 key forces that all slammed together at the exact same time. Yeah, you can think of these like 4 powerful currents all pulling the market down at once. You've got the shaky global economy, you've got profit-taking from crypto insiders, some funky stuff happening on the charts, and, of course, the most powerful driver of them all, just pure, unadulterated fear. So first up, let's zoom out. The bigger economic picture has gotten pretty chilly for anything considered risky. The Fed basically took away the punch bowl by pausing rate cuts. Super safe government bonds started looking really, really attractive. And then you throw in some more US-China drama. Well, that's a classic recipe for investors to run for cover. But here's the thing, it wasn't all just outside forces. A ton of the selling pressure came from inside the house. And the scale here is just mind-blowing. Long-term Bitcoin holders sold 400,000 coins in October alone. We saw these giant, dusty old whale wallets that hadn't moved in years suddenly wake up and send coins to exchanges. That's pretty much the bad signal that a big sale is coming. Okay, our third driver is a little bit technical, but hang with me because it's absolutely crucial. It's the Relative Strength Index, or RSI. The easiest way to think about it is like the tachometer in your car. It tells you how hard the market's engine is revving. If it's way up in the red, we call that overbought. But if it drops way down low, below 30, that's oversold. It's a sign the sellers might just be running out of gas. And this right here shows you exactly what I'm talking about. Look at Ethereum. Its RSI just plunged all the way down to 24.3. That is deep into oversold territory. It tells us the selling pressure got way, way overextended. And paradoxically, that's often the exact kind of thing you see right before a sharp, violent snapback in the other direction. And that leads us to where this whole story takes a really fascinating turn. Because while all the headlines were screaming crash, there was a totally different story bubbling up just under the surface. What if this brutal sell-off wasn't the end of the world? What if it was actually a necessary, even healthy reset? This is what we call a tale of two markets, happening at the exact same time. On one side, you had the weak hands. Think panic selling, folks spooked by the scary headlines. But on the other side, you had the strong hands, the big institutions, those new ETFs. What were they doing?
They were buying, steadily, quietly. One person's fear-driven decision became another's opportunity.
And look, this isn't just a vibe. The charts tell a really powerful story here. At the absolute low point of the panic, Bitcoin's price came down and found a floor, perfectly, right at its 20-week moving average. Now for traders, that line is the ultimate line in the sand. It separates a healthy dip from a full-blown crisis. And even with the biggest liquidation in history, that line held.
So what does that tell us? Well, it suggests this might not have been a random crash at all. Think of it more like a mid-cycle reset. Its whole purpose is to just flush out all the crazy speculation, all the excessive greed. And if you look back at crypto history, this pattern happens over and over again. These massive liquidations, they were never the end. They were the painful but necessary reset that cleared the board for the next huge move up.
So all of this leads us to, right now, to this massive inflection point. The slate has been wiped clean. We've seen both sides of the argument. So the big question is, where do we go from here?
Well, the near future is packed with potential fireworks. You've got Ethereum's massive FATCA upgrade coming. You've got critical inflation data, the end of the US government shutdown, and the Fed is set to end its quantitative tightening program. Any one of these events is a huge potential market mover.
And let's just focus on that government shutdown for a second, because the scale here is just mind-boggling. When it ends, it's expected to unlock over $1 trillion and inject it straight back into the banking system. That is a massive wave of cash that has to find a home. And historically, that kind of liquidity has been pure rocket fuel for assets like crypto.
And you know who's taking notice? Wall Street. This quote is from Tom Lee, one of the first big-time analysts to really take Bitcoin seriously. His take is crystal clear. He's not looking at this as a failure. In fact, for the market to take a punch that big and stay standing, he sees that as a massive sign of strength.
And based on that strength, some analysts have some incredibly ambitious price targets out there. The logic isn't just a guess. It's like a recipe with 3 key ingredients. You've got central banks getting ready to make money cheaper. You have that relentless, nonstop demand from the ETFs, and you have a supply shock as long-term holders lock their coins away. You put those 3 things together, and you get a powerful cocktail.
Which brings us right back to where we are now. The entire market is like a coiled spring, just wound incredibly tight, caught in this great tug of war. And you can see it perfectly with Ethereum holding on for dear life at this critical level, 3584. That number is everything right now. If it holds, the bulls are in control. If it breaks, look out below. All the evidence, all the tension in the charts, all the fear and the greed, it all points to one thing. A huge, decisive move is coming, and probably soon. This wasn't the end of the party. It was a violent, chaotic, but maybe, just maybe, a necessary cleansing. And that leaves us with just one massive question. Which way is it going to break?